Imagine an army of savage horsemen, so numerous that the ground trembles beneath their hooves. The dust clouds from their approach can be seen for miles, blotting out the sun like an approaching storm. They didn't come to negotiate, they came to destroy. This is the power of the Huns, and Rome is about to kneel. In the 5th century, the Eastern Roman Empire faced an enemy that defied even their most experienced generals. An enemy that moved like the wind, struck like lightning, and left only ashes in their wake: the Huns. In the year 435, these two mighty powers signed a treaty that would alter the fate of two empires forever. The price of peace? 700 pounds of gold per year, and the honor of Rome itself. The Treaty of Margus wasn't just a diplomatic agreement, it was a confession of fear, a testament to how far the mighty could fall when faced with an unstoppable force. Picture this: Roman diplomats, descendants of conquerors who once ruled the known world, now standing before Hun leaders, offering gold, literal mountains of gold, just to be left alone. Behind the treaty's formal language lay a brutal truth. Rome, once the predator, had become the prey. If you love history and want to unravel the mysteries of great empires like this video, subscribe to Legacy of Empires and don't miss a single episode. Join us as we explore the moments when history pivoted, when empires rose and fell, and when the course of civilization changed forever. After decades of relentless Hun attacks, the Eastern Roman Empire was exhausted. Their once mighty legions had been stretched thin across thousands of miles of frontier. Their cities, once prosperous centers of trade, now lived in constant fear of the next raid. The empire that had conquered the known world was being bled dry by an enemy they could neither defeat nor understand. The year is 435. The Roman economy lies in tatters. Their military, once the envy of the world, is scattered and demoralized. The imperial treasury, which once overflowed with the wealth of conquered nations, now struggles to maintain even basic defenses. Enter Consul Plinter, a Roman diplomat tasked with an impossible mission: secure peace with the Huns at any cost. Imagine walking into negotiations knowing you have no leverage, no military advantage, no economic upper hand. Just the desperate need to stop the bleeding. What choice did he have? He accepted the unthinkable, doubling the annual tribute to 700 pounds of gold. Let that sink in: 700 pounds of gold. Not coins, not silver, pure gold. Did you know that 700 pounds of gold equals nearly 300 kilograms of metal? In today's value, that would be worth more than $20 million. And that wasn't a one-time payment. This was every single year, the equivalent of an entire Roman province's annual tax revenue handed over to their enemies. But here's what made the treaty truly humiliating. This wasn't just about gold. The Romans also agreed not to form alliances with any enemies of the Huns. They promised to return any Hun refugees seeking asylum in Roman territory. Think about that. A civilization built on law and order, agreeing to hand over desperate people to face certain death. And yet, hidden within this seemingly straightforward agreement was a trap, a diplomatic snare that would give the Huns exactly what they needed: time to grow stronger and a legal justification for war whenever they wanted it. Any minor violation of these harsh terms could be used as a pretext for invasion. Plinter may have secured peace, but at what cost? He had essentially signed away Rome's sovereignty, its moral authority, and its gold, all to an enemy that had no intention of honoring peace in the long term. The Senate chambers in Constantinople must have fallen deathly silent when the terms were announced. The once proud Romans, descendants of Julius Caesar and Augustus, reduced to paying protection money like common shopkeepers to street thugs. While Rome counted out gold coins by the thousands trying to buy peace, two Hun leaders were using that very treasure to forge something far more dangerous: an empire built on fear. Meet the brothers who would reshape Europe: Bleda the strategist and Attila, the man who would soon be known as the Scourge of God. Few partnerships in history have been as terrifying. Imagine two brothers, raised in the saddle, taught from childhood that the world existed to be conquered. In 435, they had just begun their joint rule over the Hunnic tribes, having inherited power from their uncle Ruger. But unlike most siblings who might fight for the throne, these two understood something crucial. Together, they were unstoppable. Bleda, the elder brother, was the calculating one. While less famous today than Attila, he was no less dangerous. He spoke multiple languages, understood Roman politics, and knew exactly how to exploit imperial weaknesses. It was Bleda who likely orchestrated the diplomatic framework of the Treaty of Margus, creating terms that would slowly strangle Rome while appearing reasonable on parchment. Then there was Attila. History remembers him as the face of Hun brutality, but he was far more than a simple barbarian. Those who met him described a man of surprising restraint and intelligence, small in stature, but possessing a gaze that could make emperors tremble. One Roman diplomat wrote that Attila carried himself proudly, flicking his eyes here and there as though seeking dangers to conquer. The brothers understood something that Rome didn't want to admit. Gold wasn't just wealth, it was power in its purest form. Every coin Rome sent east funded Hunnic armies, bought loyalty from neighboring tribes, and forged better weapons. While Rome thought they were paying for peace, they were actually financing their own future destruction. Bleda and Attila didn't just want the gold. They didn't just want land. They wanted to subjugate the world, to create a legacy that would outlive them both. The Roman Empire, with its marble palaces and ancient traditions, represented everything the nomadic Huns were not, and therefore everything they sought to dominate. The siblings had a brilliant system. Bleda handled diplomacy and internal politics, while Attila led the military campaigns that terrorized both allies and enemies. Together, they transformed what had been loosely affiliated tribes into a disciplined war machine that stretched from modern Hungary to the steppes of China. Here's something few people realize. The Treaty of Margus wasn't just a financial agreement, it was reconnaissance. Each delegation of Huns that entered Roman territory to collect tribute returned with maps, information about defenses, and knowledge of which areas were wealthy and which were vulnerable. For the brothers, the treaty was merely the first step in a grand strategy. Peace was never the goal, domination was, and Rome had just handed them the resources to achieve it. 5 years after signing the Treaty of Margus, Rome made a decision that would prove catastrophic. In the year 440, the Eastern Empire committed what the Huns considered an unforgivable betrayal. They sheltered Hun refugees fleeing from Bleda and Attila's harsh rule, and worse still, formed alliances with tribes who opposed Hunnic expansion. To understand the magnitude of this mistake, you need to see it through Hun eyes. These weren't just diplomatic technicalities, they were direct violations of the treaty's core principles. Remember those harsh terms: no harboring refugees, no alliances with Hun enemies. Rome had now broken both promises. Perhaps the Romans thought they could get away with it. Perhaps they believed the Huns wouldn't notice or wouldn't care about a few tribal alliances and a handful of refugees. This miscalculation would cost them dearly. Word traveled fast across the steppes. Hunnic spies within Roman territory reported back to their leaders. Imagine the scene in the royal tent as Bleda and Attila received this news. The calculated rage, the immediate understanding that Rome had just handed them the perfect pretext for war. They didn't hesitate. They didn't send envoys demanding explanations. They attacked. Their target, Castra Constantia, a vital Roman market fortress situated on the banks of the mighty Danube River. Today, we know this place as Szentendre in modern Hungary. This wasn't just any outpost, it was a crucial trade hub where merchants from both empires exchanged goods. Attacking it sent a clear message: peace was over. The assault was devastating. Hunnic riders swept down upon the fortress like a storm. Merchants fled in terror. Roman soldiers, caught unprepared, were overwhelmed. The marketplace, once bustling with trade, became a scene of slaughter. Within hours, Castra Constantia was in flames. This wasn't just a raid, it was the opening move in a new campaign of conquest. By striking this particular target, Bleda and Attila demonstrated their strategic brilliance. They didn't just punish Rome, they cut off a vital economic artery while securing a strategic crossing point on the Danube. One eyewitness account, preserved in fragments by a Byzantine chronicler, describes the attack. They came at dawn, when the mist still hung over the river. By midday, nothing remained but smoke and weeping. The Huns took everything of value and burned what they could not carry. What makes this moment so pivotal is how it transformed the relationship between Rome and the Huns. The Treaty of Margus, that humiliating document signed just 5 years earlier, was now ashes. The pretense of peace was gone. The 700 pounds of gold had bought Rome nothing but a brief respite before an even more terrible war. And here's what's fascinating. Bleda and Attila had been planning this all along. The treaty had never been anything but a temporary measure in their eyes, a way to build strength while keeping Rome complacent. When Rome provided them with a legitimate reason to attack, they seized it immediately. The Romans would soon learn a harsh lesson. Parchment agreements mean nothing to those who rule through terror. The real negotiation was about to begin, written not with ink, but with fire and blood. Did you know that Attila nearly died from poisoning before his campaign against Rome? History sometimes hangs by the thinnest threads. If you're enjoying this video, hit that like button, share it with your history-loving friends, and subscribe to Legacy of Empires for more epic tales from the ancient world. And tell us in the comments, would you have defied the Huns or paid whatever price they demanded for peace? The debate continues below. The Treaty of Margus wasn't just about gold changing hands. Its true significance reaches far beyond the immediate economic impact. This agreement fundamentally altered the balance of power in Europe and sent ripples through history that we can still trace today. When Rome signed that fateful document in 435, they did something far more dangerous than emptying their treasury. They revealed weakness. For centuries, Rome had maintained power through the perception of invincibility. That perception shattered the moment they agreed to pay tribute to the Huns. In the aftermath of the treaty's collapse, Bleda and Attila unleashed a reign of terror across the Balkans that would reshape the demographic and political landscape of Eastern Europe forever. Between 441 and 443, they devastated the region, sacking major cities including Singidunum, modern-day Belgrade, and Serdica, which we now know as Sofia, Bulgaria. What's rarely discussed is how the treaty changed the very nature of Hun society. Before Margus, the Huns were primarily nomadic raiders without permanent settlements. The influx of Roman gold allowed them to build something resembling a true state, with a capital along the Tisa River in modern Hungary. Roman gold paid for Hun cities, an irony that wouldn't have been lost on the emperors of old. Consider this. At the height of the Hun Empire after the treaty, they controlled territory from the Rhine to the Ural Mountains and from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. This vast domain wasn't just conquered by military might. It was purchased in part with Rome's own gold. The treaty also triggered mass migrations that would permanently alter Europe's ethnic makeup. As the Huns expanded with their newfound wealth and confidence, they pushed Germanic tribes westward. These displaced peoples, Goths, Vandals, Alans, would eventually contribute to the fall of the Western Roman Empire. In a sense, by trying to buy off one enemy in the east, Rome inadvertently financed the creation of new enemies in the west. Perhaps the most fascinating legacy of the Treaty of Margus is how it changed Roman diplomatic practice. After this humiliating agreement, Eastern Roman emperors became increasingly reluctant to engage in tribute diplomacy. preferring instead to play potential invaders against each other. This strategy, which historians call divide and conquer diplomacy, would become a hallmark of Byzantine foreign policy for centuries to come. There's a sad irony in how the treaty ended. After Rome violated the agreement and suffered the Hun attack on Castra Constantia, they negotiated a new treaty, one with even harsher terms. The tribute was tripled to £2,100 of gold annually. The lesson wasn't learned, it was merely made more expensive. The Treaty of Margus teaches us something profound about power in the ancient world. The might of empires, even those that seemed eternal like Rome, could be broken by a proverbial iron fist. Rome had conquered the Mediterranean with swords, but was itself conquered with a piece of parchment that exposed its greatest fear, that it was no longer the predator, but the prey. After Attila's death in 453, the Hun Empire quickly collapsed. But by then, the damage was done. Europe had been transformed. New kingdoms arose from the ashes. Population centers shifted. Ethnic groups relocated. And Rome had learned a lesson it would never forget, that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the sword, but the treaty signed to avoid it. The Treaty of Margus stands as a powerful reminder that history isn't just made on battlefields, but at negotiating tables. This ancient agreement, signed in a forgotten town on the banks of a river, was a deadly game of power, pride, and betrayal that changed the fate of two empires. When we look back at this moment, we see how even the mightiest civilization of its time could be brought to its knees, not by swords, but by signatures. Rome, desperate for respite, signed away not just its gold, but its dignity. The Huns, patient and calculating, used parchment as a weapon more effective than any arrow or spear. The treaty reminds us that even the most carefully planned agreements can crumble when fear and ambition collide. Rome feared destruction. The Huns were ambitious for conquest. When these forces met, no document could contain them. Perhaps the most haunting lesson from Margus is how quickly power can shift. In just 5 years, Rome went from reluctant treaty partner to victim of invasion. In less than a generation, the Huns went from feared raiders to empire builders. And within a decade of Attila's death, the Hun Empire itself had vanished like morning mist. History asks us uncomfortable questions. What would you have done in Rome's position, paid the gold to buy time, refused and faced certain destruction, or perhaps tried a different path altogether? The decisions made by long-dead emperors and diplomats echo through time, reminding us that leadership demands choices between terrible options. The world that emerged from the ashes of the Treaty of Margus, a world of migrating peoples, fallen cities and new kingdoms, would eventually become the Europe we know today. In a very real sense, the map of our modern world was drawn in part by those horsemen from the steppes and the Romans who tried to buy them off. If you enjoyed this journey back to the 5th century, hit that like button and share this video with friends who appreciate how the past shapes our present. Subscribe to Legacy of Empires for more content about the ancient world, from the rise of Rome to the fall of Constantinople and everything in between. Until our next historical adventure, remember, empires rise and empires fall, but their stories endure forever.